He was just 20 when he became king. By 25, he ruled Egypt, Persia, and half of Asia. And by 32, he had built the largest empire the world had ever seen, without losing a single battle. How does King Alexander become one of the greatest emperors that ever exist? What made him so special? Is it his genetics, or is it his mindset, or is it something else? Let's find out. The truth is, Alexander wasn't just born into greatness. He trained for it, through curiosity, discipline, strategy, emotional wisdom, and a vision that stretched beyond empires. These weren't just royal habits. They were life-changing qualities, the kind that shaped his mind, his mission, and his destiny. The same qualities that made Alexander a king can make you a leader in your own life. Because greatness isn't about power or status. It's about who you become when no one is watching, and how you lead when the world finally does. This is the story of how Alexander trained himself to rise above the ordinary, and how you can use the same lessons to change your own life, starting today. Even after conquering cities, Alexander sought wisdom. In Egypt, he visited the oracle of Siwa to question the nature of divinity. In Babylon, he studied Persian customs. In India, he debated with naked philosophers on life and truth. He didn't just conquer land, he absorbed culture, he respected knowledge, he believed wisdom was power. So the lesson number one is relentless curiosity and education. At the age of 13, Alexander was pulled away from the noise of the palace and sent to a quiet grove in Mysa to be educated by none other than Aristotle. This wasn't your average schoolroom. Under the open skies of Macedonia, Aristotle didn't just teach him subjects, he taught him to think. Alexander devoured philosophy, logic, medicine, geography, astronomy, and ethics. He asked questions that most adults couldn't answer. He learned how plants could heal and how ideas could rule. And that knowledge wasn't just stored in scrolls, it followed him into battle. In 333 BCE, during the Battle of Issus, Alexander faced the massive army of Persian King Darius III. Most generals would panic, but Alexander used his deep knowledge of geography and positioning, skills sharpened by Aristotle, to lure the Persians into a narrow mountain pass. Outnumbered but not outwitted, he crushed Darius's forces and captured his family. Alexander didn't train just to win wars. He trained to understand the world. So ask yourself, are you training your mind the way you train your body or your feed? Do what Alexander did. Learn daily, even in chaos. Learning isn't just for calm moments or quiet classrooms. It's a habit to carry through every challenge, every chaos. Alexander didn't stop studying just because he was on the battlefield or marching through harsh deserts. He read, observed, and absorbed knowledge wherever he went. Even when surrounded by noise, uncertainty, and pressure, he made room for growth because he knew that true strength comes from a sharp mind, not just a strong sword. So, no matter how busy or difficult your day is, commit to learning something new, a fact, a skill, a perspective, because growth doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It happens in the storm. Don't just consume content, seek understanding, because the most powerful tool you'll ever carry is your mind. In a world overflowing with content, scrolling, swiping, binge-watching, it's easy to mistake consumption for learning. But true learning isn't about how much you absorb. It's about how deeply you understand. Anyone can repeat information, but very few can explain it. Fewer still can apply it. And that's the difference between noise and knowledge. Alexander the Great didn't just listen, he questioned. He didn't just memorize, he understood. Under Aristotle's guidance, he studied why things worked, how the world moved, and how people thought. He didn't just consume ideas, he challenged them. That's what made him powerful, not just physically, but intellectually. Because the strongest weapon he ever carried wasn't his sword, it was his mind. And yours? It's sharper than you think, but only if you sharpen it. So when you learn, don't just scroll, don't just listen. Pause, reflect, question, dig deeper, apply what you've learned to your life. Because understanding, not information, is what separates a follower from a leader, and a common man from a king. In 331 BCE, at the Battle of Gaugamela, Alexander faced King Darius again, this time with an army over 10 times his size. Rather than retreat, he trained his men relentlessly, sharpening tactics, boosting morale, and staying laser-focused. Then, with calm precision, Alexander executed a daring flanking maneuver that split the Persian line. Chaos erupted, and Darius fled again. He didn't just win, he out-disciplined an empire. 2. So the second quality that you have to learn is discipline of a warrior. Alexander's discipline wasn't just about muscle, it was mental, emotional, complete control under pressure. Before he was a general, Alexander trained like a grunt. From an early age, his father, King Philip II, a brilliant military strategist, made sure his son didn't grow up soft in the luxury of the palace. Alexander trained daily in swordsmanship, hand-to-hand combat, archery, and horseback riding. He ran with soldiers, not servants. Discipline isn't about aggression, it's about self-mastery. Alexander woke up early, trained hard, thought clearly, and never asked others to do what he wouldn't do himself. Here's how you can apply this quality to your life. Create a daily routine, even when it's uncomfortable. Why? Because greatness doesn't come from what you do once. It comes from what you do every single day. Alexander the Great didn't become a legend by acting when he felt inspired. He trained every morning, studied every day, planned every night. Not when it was convenient, but when it was necessary. He rode with his men through freezing mountains, marched across deserts, and still kept the discipline to lead, to learn, to focus. Your routine is your battlefield. If you only show up when it's easy, you'll never grow strong enough to handle what's hard. Create a system, a rhythm, that keeps you aligned with your goals, even when you're tired, stressed, distracted, or discouraged. Because discipline isn't built in comfort, it's built in resistance. Anyone can be consistent when life is smooth, but the ones who stick to their routine when it's uncomfortable, those are the ones who rise. Whether it's waking up early, reading for 10 minutes, working out for 30, practicing your craft, make it non-negotiable. The world doesn't reward potential, it rewards consistency. So build your routine, protect it, stick to it. Because your habits today are shaping the person you'll become tomorrow. Lead yourself first, before expecting others to follow. We often hear about leadership like it's about titles, followers, or influence. But true leadership doesn't start with others. It starts with you. Before Alexander the Great ever commanded an army, he commanded himself. He trained harder than his soldiers. He studied longer than his peers. He endured the same hunger, the same heat, the same pain as the men he led, and sometimes even more. Why? Because he knew that a leader who can't lead himself will never earn the right to lead others. You can't ask for respect if you don't respect your own word. You can't inspire others if you can't motivate yourself. You can't guide a team if you're lost in your own life. Leadership isn't about control, it's about example. It's about being the kind of person you'd want to follow, even when no one's watching. So ask yourself, do you keep your promises to yourself? Do you stay disciplined when no one's pushing you? Do you live by the values you talk about? If the answer is yes, people will follow, not because you told them to, but because they trust you. Lead yourself with integrity, effort, and purpose, and others will follow by choice, not command. The third quality is strategic thinking, outsmarting empires, one move at a time. Alexander wasn't the biggest ruler. He didn't have the largest army, but he had something far more dangerous, a strategic mind that never stopped evolving. He understood one core truth of war: strength without strategy is just wasted muscle. And one of his greatest tests of strategy came in 332 BCE, at the walled island city of Tyre. Tyre was a fortress in the sea, located nearly half a mile off the coast. No army had ever conquered it by land. Most would have walked away. But Alexander didn't retreat. He refused to fight the enemy on their terms. and instead changed the battlefield itself. He ordered his men to build a massive causeway, a land bridge, from the shore all the way to the city. Under constant attack, it took 7 brutal months. He brought in ships, constructed siege towers, and finally breached the walls. Tyre fell. Not because Alexander was stronger, but because he was smarter and more determined. Life, like war, rewards those who think beyond the obvious. Alexander saw opportunities where others saw dead ends, because he trained his mind to always adapt, plan, and predict. Use his strategic thinking. When facing a challenge, ask, what am I not seeing? What would Alexander do here? Break big problems into small victories. Prepare your next move before you need it. Conquer your life like a battlefield, not with chaos, but with a brilliant plan. 4. Emotional intelligence and leadership. Winning hearts, not just wars. Alexander wasn't just a military genius, he was a master of human connection. He led men who would die for him, not because he was king, but because he was one of them. He ate their food, marched beside them, and endured their pain. When they crossed the brutal Gedrosian desert, and his men found only a helmet full of water, they offered it to Alexander. He poured it out onto the ground, showing them he wouldn't take a drop they couldn't have too. That single act kept the army moving. When his childhood friend and General Hephaestion died, Alexander didn't hide his grief. He refused food for days. He cut his hair, had thousands of animals sacrificed in mourning, and ordered temples across Asia to honor his friend. Many saw it as excessive, but it wasn't weakness, it was humanity. In that moment, his men didn't just follow a king. They followed a man who felt, who loved, who cared. Alexander knew that armies weren't moved by fear. They were moved by trust. He remembered names, celebrated victories, shared rewards, and even when he ruled over different cultures, he respected their traditions, wearing Persian dress, marrying foreign queens, and training locals to lead. He didn't just conquer empires, he unified them. In your world, career, friendships, leadership, people follow those who care. Alexander proved that greatness isn't about ruling with an iron fist. It's about leading with loyalty, humility, and emotional strength. Practice emotional intelligence like Alexander. Listen more. Understand the people you lead. Lead by example. Never ask for what you won't give. Build loyalty by showing up in hard times, not just good ones. Because people may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. 5th, and the last quality that made King Alexander a great emperor, was vision bigger than himself, building an empire of ideas. Every ruler wants power, but Alexander wanted something more. He believed he was destined to unify the world, not just through conquest, but through culture, knowledge, and connection. As he pushed east, he didn't just destroy kingdoms, he rebuilt them. He left behind cities, libraries, roads, schools, and systems. The most famous of them, Alexandria in Egypt, became a center of learning for centuries, long after his death. When he adopted the Persian custom of proskynesis, bowing before the king, his Macedonian generals were outraged. But Alexander wasn't trying to replace Greek values. He was trying to blend cultures. He dreamed of a world where East and West were one, where ideas flowed freely across borders, where a Persian and a Greek could serve in the same army, rule in the same court, learn in the same schools. In 324 BCE, at the Susa weddings, he married 2 Persian princesses and had thousands of his men marry Persian women in a grand political ceremony. He wasn't just fighting wars. He was designing a future. You don't need to build an empire to live with vision, but you do need something bigger than yourself. A dream, a purpose, a mission that gets you up when life knocks you down. Follow Alexander's vision. Ask, what am I building that will outlive me? Set goals that scare you, then grow into the person who can achieve them. Connect with people who are different, and build bridges, not walls. Because true greatness isn't just about how far you go, it's about what you leave behind. Alexander the Great didn't just conquer lands, he conquered himself. His discipline, curiosity, vision, emotional strength, and relentless pursuit of growth didn't just shape an empire, they shaped a legacy. And here's the truth. You don't need to lead an army to lead your life. You don't need a crown to build something extraordinary. The same qualities that forged a king can transform your mindset, your habits, and your future if you choose to apply them. So start where you are, train your mind, lead yourself, think bigger, because the next great empire might not be on a map. It might be within you.